I gotta say, this crowd not only knows how to cheer for everybody, but there are young people, there are old people, there are black people, there are white people, there are people of every race and background here. And it's strange to say to this kind of crowd, but people bring up all the time that we don't have activists like we used to in the 60s and the 70s. We don't have people like Dick Gregory, you know. We do have Dick Gregory. And we're educating everybody else. And on a less positive note, one of the 3,004 young people who have died for this country in Iraq was John Torres, who died
Afghanistan.
I'm sorry, died in Afghanistan on the 12th of July, 2004. And his father, Juan Torres, is with us here this evening. And I don't... Dan mentioned Don't Attack Iran. If you go to don'tattackiran.org, there are over 100,000 signatures now. Add some more.
Sounds like another trip to the White House.
We're done. Cindy could tell you how we had to throw the first 80,000 over the fence at the White House, but that's another story. Sunsara is a powerful speaker at rallies and in the media, and you may question her sanity if you know that she went over this afternoon and appeared on television talking with a guy named Bill O'Reilly. But this suggests a willingness to do work that is less than pleasant, and that's what we need. Sunsara Taylor. Yeah.
Now I'm going to try to compress what else I have here. I wanted to say that there are war crimes being committed. This is another part of the conversation that has to change. People are against the war, but they don't actually know. They are tired of watching the news. They're tired of hearing the details. War crimes. What am I talking about? A war of aggression? People have spoken about this. The highest kind of war crime. Nuremberg standards. There was no legitimate fear for self-defense of the United States to launch that war. But also the way this war has been conducted. I want to talk about Fallujah as just one example. This was a city where the entire city, 350,000 people, was cut off from electricity and water. This is collective punishment. This is a war crime. The hospital was taken over. There were snipers shooting at ambulances, at the hospital, at children. These are war crimes. There was more than 1 ton of bombs per person dropped on that city. People need to know the scope and the scale of this crime. And these are war crimes, and if we do not rise up in this country politically and create a situation where impeachment gets put back on the table, then we are complicit in these crimes. And this is actually a challenge we have to go and put to people. The majority of the country, the problem is not that the majority of the country supports Bush. The problem is that the majority of the country is still passive and paralyzed, even though they agree with us, and it's going to take political struggle. And the people in this room have a disproportionate role to play in going out and challenging them. We need visible resistance that fuels a national conversation where the whole country has to take sides. Are you for torture, or are you against it? Are you for the slaughter of the Iraqi people, or are you against it? Are you for spying on the public, or are you against it? Are you for preaching abstinence and ignorance and patriarchy, or are you against it? Are you for denying fundamental rights to gay people, or are you against it? Are you for abandoning black people and others in toxic floodwaters and then abandoning them for another 1.5 years as relief and housing are cut off and New Orleans remains unbuilt, or are you against it? Are you for replacing science with religion in the public schools, or are you against it? Are you for papering over global warming or against it? If we can set these terms in society and go out and challenge people, if you want to be against these things, you have to step up. Now is the time history is being made. And you need to, 2007 needs to be a year of political struggle. And we have to go out and challenge people. If people had to pick sides, we'd be much further along. If we let them sit on the sidelines, we're going to lose this, and history is going to pay. You can even imagine, had there been 100,000 people or 200,000 people out before the 2006 election demanding, the world cannot wait, we must drive out the Bush regime, it would be much harder for Nancy Pelosi right now to insist that impeachment is off the table. And if she tried to insist, it would be much more likely, had people seen massive protests before the elections, be much more likely that the population would react with political outcry and resistance, not with passive acceptance and demoralization. This is a dynamic that we have to challenge and change. The White House and Congress need to look out and see that the country is overwhelmingly polarized against them, and they need to seriously fear that if they do not put a stop to this whole direction, that the political resistance is only going to escalate, and that they are going to lose the allegiance of millions of people in this country. That is what it's going to take to get Nancy Pelosi to put impeachment back on the table. And key, I just want to say, key in getting this dynamic going is changing the whole conversation. There's one other thing I want to invite you guys to do with us, which is there's a call that launched the World Can't Wait movement. It goes through the crimes of this government. It goes through the fact that there will be no savior from the Democratic Party. It goes through the fact that we ourselves need to take responsibility in our millions for changing the course of history. And this needs to get in the hands of millions of people. It's available at worldcan'twait.org. It's available back on the table. Go there, read the call, add your name to it, get involved in this movement, email it to everybody you know, print it out, hand it out at bus stops, hand it out to people you work with, donate towards getting it published as ads, read on the radio, and plastered on the walls of every city across this country. When we put an ad in the USA Today, we have found people in over 230 cities, tons of quote-unquote red state areas who are hungry for this movement. This call needs to reach them. The people are out there. They're waiting for us to go get them. So I want to say, in closing, again, that every generation puts its stamp on the world. What will ours be? In the final words of the call for the World Can't Wait, it says this: history is full of examples where people who had right on their side fought against tremendous odds and were victorious. It is also full of examples where people passively hope to wait it out, only to get swallowed up by a horror beyond what they ever imagined. The future is unwritten. Which one we get is up to us.